You are creative, regardless of whether you are working. Nothing's really permanent, and these times or these phases in our lives that we live through, it's not going to be the same in a year or two. So give yourself a break. If you can be a good parent, great. If you can be a great artist at the same time, amazing. Maybe you can't do both. That's okay too. You know, it doesn't stop you. Like, you're not going to lose that essence of yourself. And I would say stake out time to be alone. That is the best medicine. If you are trying to be creative and you're parenting, solitude. For me, that's what I crave. And if you can make some time to do that, that'll be more beneficial than any other advice I could give. Be happy, happy, happy,
Hello, listeners. Welcome back. Today, we're excited to have part 2 with the amazing Tanya Burne. You know, some conversations, they make you laugh out loud, and then they hit you in the heart. This episode is exactly that. Tanya brings humor and depth and truth in a way that feels both liberating and deeply human. You know, we talk with Tanya about owning your own voice and showing up authentically, turning pain into art, and why sharing our stories matter. The healing power of creativity and community, redefining motherhood, identity, and what it means to be enough. Tanya's amazing. She's a mom. She's an artist. She's one of the most inspiring people that I have come across, and I'm so happy to have her today. Let's dive in.
So I finished an undergraduate degree in Australia, and I had been working as an actor. But I'd always had this, look, I'm talking a childhood dream. I'm talking like I remember being in the front yard of my parents' house and wishing on a star at the age of about 6 that I would go to New York and study acting. Like, I didn't know anything, but I had a father who was incredibly inspirational in the sense that he kind of drip fed me enough kind of artistic material to make me believe, even at that age, that is something that I could wish for. Now, I know it sounds really daggy, but it's true. I actually, I stood in the front yard and so I got to 25 years old, and the work here in Australia was pretty unfulfilling, and my ambition had not kind of died down or calmed down. In my 20s, I barely could keep a relationship, let alone a job. It was my whole world, and I didn't have a lot of opportunity. And so I thought, oh, well, this actor's studio place, I'll just send in the application. I won't even, I'll just write an essay. And it kind of just happened after that. Like, then I got invited to audition, and they're like, you can just send a tape. And I'm like, I'm not sending a tape. I'm coming over. And I remember my audition for, I don't know if you've ever watched Inside the Actors Studio, but James Lipton, the host. Yeah.
Yes.
So he's there in the audition, and I'm, jet lagged. I'm staying in this really crappy hotel. I didn't have a scene partner. I decided to do a solo piece. And he came up to me. He came up to the stage and he said to me, do you realize that this course is from A to Z and you're close to Z? And how would you feel about, relearning? And I'm like, I didn't know what he was talking about. It's this A to Z business, A to Z, as you say. But yeah, anyway, so that happened. Then I came home. I mean, I was broke. I was living in a crappy share house. And then I get this letter saying, you've been accepted. And I was like, oh, that's nice, but I can't go because I can't afford the fees. I can't afford tuition. I did nothing. I did nothing about it. I didn't contact financial aid. I didn't tell anyone that I was going. Then I got this phone call from the administrator of the course saying, what are you doing? Have you haven't responded to our letter. And I said, what letter? And she said, we'd like to give you like an 85% tuition scholarship. And so then I was like, okay, well, maybe this is possible. But I still had to beg for money. I still begged for money. I did this whole campaign. I talked on radio stations. I spooked myself. I just tried to get some funding to help me across. My parents couldn't help me. I wasn't in a position to pay for my own housing. I was on a student visa. I couldn't work. Anyway, I managed to get there. It was, I was really miserable, really, for 6 months. I really hated New
Why?
York. Um, Big city, lack of oxygen, too many people. I was incredibly broke, and I was living at a Salvation Army residence for women, which was a cross between an aged care home and a sorority house, if you can imagine. And
Yes.
yeah, it was a grind, but I mean, it got better when I adjusted. Um, so yeah, I mean that happened. Then I came back to Australia, and there still wasn't much work here. No one really cared that I'd been to the actor's studio. Um, so I mean, in terms of my journey, I mean, I've created my own work a lot of the time. I've been a producer, I've been a director, I've been a writer. And it's the projects that I love the most are the ones that I've driven, that I haven't been hired by someone, that I've actually just hired myself. And
Mhm.
I love having that creative control. And I guess here I am again, in my 50s looking for a project and realizing again that if I don't back myself, it's not going to happen. But I do really believe if you honestly think that you deserve something, that you are good enough and that you're worthy, you can make it happen. If there's a glimmer of doubt, not so much. You have to be, I feel like I've had to be incredibly sturdy in my commitment to what I want. And that's exhausting sometimes because sometimes you want someone to hire you and pay you and
Yes.
work with you and inspire you. So the challenge now is I'm creating this. Well, I've written a one-woman play, but its reach is really dampened by the fact that it's theatrical.
You're putting it doing live theater, or you're
That's
going to put it on in theater screens?
so no. Oh yeah, live theater. Sorry, I should say we
Okay.
call theater screens cinemas, but yes,
Oh,
live theater. But it's not really. I've had to kind of move away from that idea. And now I'm thinking, really, because of the Instagram situation, is that to be accessible, that I really need to do it as a web series and somehow produce it so it can be broadcast. I'm at this point where I need a collaborator. Do you know what I mean? I need someone who's really savvy, who gets the content. And it's really nice to work with someone because it's a motivating factor. When you're on your own, it's very easy to get distracted and do other things. It's very, it's so, yeah, I don't feel like I'm letting anyone down if I don't do it. Whereas when you're collaborating, you know.
I love it that you said it's hard to self-motivate because I just finished talking to Jessica about that right before we got online with you. She said, maybe we should all do, I think it was the artist way together, right, sweet? And I was like, okay, like as if I'm going to have time for that. Like I've got my kids, I've got my work, however, I said to her, if I have accountability, I will do it. And a lot of the time, my jobs keep me accountable or my kids keep me accountable. But when I have a few hours of my day where there's nothing pulling me in any direction, sometimes I just want to lie in bed, even though the back of my mind is like, this is your time where you should be writing your book, or this is your time. And I'm flattened. And so there's something really beautiful about having accountability, and especially with the people that you love and people that you trust, and surrounding yourself with people like-minded people who get it. Jessica, Shelly, and I are always like, you know what? We're in the flow. If one of us has to cancel one week, like today, Shelly couldn't be here. We're like, you know what? We're in the flow. We're just going to stay in the flow. And we've managed to release an episode every single week.
So awesome. But I mean, I guess you're accountable to each other, which would help. You're a team, and you drive each other, and it's wonderful. You're giving people opportunities to also reflect on their own process, and it's like, as I said, I just feel really lucky and humbled. Humbled.
When we were talking last night, I love that you talked about how your training and your abilities as an actor and a director and a creator have transferred to your work as in social work. And I don't have a linear path. I'm constantly experimenting with other things. And you did that. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I got a corporate job in my 30s, and at the same time I was filming, like a TV series. And I enjoyed that juxtaposition, to be honest. But in terms of the training, I think that not just as actors, performers, if you've had quality training, the whole point of being a performer or telling stories is to connect with this kind of human condition. And that is a skill. And to be able to empathize, to be able to tell stories, it is a very transferable skill. I've had jobs that have looked on paper to be the most boring, dull government, jobs. And I realize when I'm in that space that people are like profoundly affected at my ability to speak in public. I mean, this is just like a basic thing. I can speak in a meeting. Some people live with this constant fear of their voice being heard, but we have this gift of being able, we've had practice. We know how we can be centered. There can be chaos. And as an actor or performer, you have to know your shit. You have to be in. And that skill out in the world, I mean, once you realize that it's, I don't know, things kind of opened up for me. I really needed a job to leave my relationship. That was one catalyst for looking for, work that was not creative, because I needed a steady income, and I've done jobs because I needed to support Toby. And I know some of my performer friends are kind of like, she's kind of, backed out, or she's given up. And it's not at all. And it was so surprising to me that I could work in a government job, and I found ways of being creative. I thought up projects. I made things happen in the workplace because I'm just a natural kind of creator. I'm going to want to communicate things. I'm going to want to change things. And sometimes I disrupt things because that's what we do too, right? If we see something that's not working, we want to change it. We want to give people alternatives. Some workplaces love that, others don't. But, I've learned that, in a corporate interview, I'm slamming those interviews because I know myself.
Right.
And, and sometimes I may not get the job, but if I get interview feedback, it's always, that's wonderful. And I think the key for me in bringing myself to those spaces was to remain authentic. I can't work in a space where I have to fake it. And I've just managed to find workplaces that kind of embraced my difference, I guess. And in terms of, the family violence stuff, that's always something that's been incredibly interesting to me. I'm very, very really engaged in this talks, the themes of masculinity, how gender roles play out. We have this epidemic of family violence and violence against women, and I will not stop talking about it. I will not. We have in Australia, we have 2 women a week murdered, usually by someone they know.
Really?
Yeah, it's barely on the news. And, I worked in prevention of family violence. And again, you're kind of stuck in this corporate environment. They're afraid of backlash. Or it's government environment, which is worse. Everything becomes political. You see the system not really coping. And it is a systemic problem too. And I'm not afraid of difficult topics. I'm not afraid of difficult problems. And I kind of relished getting in there and talking about hard stuff. And I do love that. I'll have hard discussions. I'll make people uncomfortable, and I don't care.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And you're supporting your son. He's already 10. When you think of how quickly it goes, the time goes by, and you're still creative. With a 10-year-old son, being a single mom, because I can relate to that. How do you find time outside of all that to continue writing?
I mean, I wrote Unhinged over 2 years ago. and it had to take a back seat because I lost my father 2 years ago, and I actually needed space. I needed 2 years to grieve and to deal with that. But you got it. I can't push it. But when I know that I have something that I need to execute creatively, sometimes I actually book myself into an Airbnb somewhere else, right? So there's nothing here. So I can't, there's no washing. There's no fucking daytime TV. There's Isn't that wild that we have to do that? But I know that.
We do that as single moms for sure. I think but I always admire couples who manage to carve out that time for themselves as well.
Oh, yeah.
That creative side, we have to keep it going. And that brings me to social media. I find, social media, I was never a big social media person, despite my, agents always saying, you need to have a big following in order to book the jobs. And I was so resistant because I kept thinking, my resume speaks for itself. Why do I have to do all of this? Why? Just look at my resume and get me in the room with somebody and I will book the job. No questions. But now I'm seeing more and more and more that there's this, it's so important because everyone needs social media. So what inspired you to start your page that's sort of an anonymous page, or you've been anonymous on that page and it's had such great success?
Yeah. Again, that came down to my capacity. Like in terms of creative, I had maybe, 20 minutes a day. So what was I going to do in 20 minutes, right? I was going to make some reels. That's what I was going to do. So, yeah.
Yes, I've started learning that too. I'm like, you know what? When I have 5 minutes and if I want to post something on or share something on social media, I feel like I'm being creative. It's useful.
It's useful. That's you using your time in a clever way. I was like, I'll do this experiment where I'll just make some reels. I'll learn how to make some reels. I sound like such an old person. I'm going to make some reels, and I'll put them out there. And if anyone likes them, then I'll keep doing it. And I thought to myself, I'm going to be anonymous because I don't want to be judged by the length of my hair or the size of my boobs or how many wrinkles I have or whatever. I just thought, nah, let's just see if my ideas and my humor has any traction. And I was willing for it to fail. I was going to give it 6 months of just daily posting the reels, commenting, creating, whatever. Anyway, 6 months later, and it just started ticking along. And then I had some reels that were like, I don't know, like I got 2 million views on one of them.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I think people think I'm funny.
Right. And you are.
You are funny. Oh my gosh. It's amazing how many, you go down a page sometimes and it's funny and then it's like, well, and then it's funny. But I was laughing out loud.
Thanks.
Boom, 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 boom. They're a good length too.
Nice and short. Well, I started to I'm not a tech head, but I'm actually like, I kind of learnt the algorithm. Like I learnt what works. What is the time limit of people's concentration? It's fuck all, really. It's really short. And I learned that you got to grab it really quickly. And I grew up watching, the movies of the 40s and 50s, old school Hollywood. So I'm very across that world of glamour and grace. And I, was able to use some of that material. But I also, my commentary was about the absurdity of aging, being a woman and dating in your 40s, just the absurdity of men in general. And how, and if you don't laugh, right, at this kind of online dating trauma that I was experiencing at the time, had experienced, that's how I dealt with the trauma. I got to laugh about it. And it's just continued to surprise me again and again. And not just so much the likes or the views, but the conversations that are happening behind from women, men who are, for some reason, they see your authenticity or something resonates and they've got, fuck, someone's like me. Someone's had that thought. Oh my God, And it's kind of, Yeah. And I'm proud, you know, like I got to 10K. My best friend took me out for like a really fancy lunch. It's so tragic, I know, but you know, it was a big deal. And I just thought, you know, I still haven't shown my boobs, you know, like it's a miracle, really. But it just goes to show, you know, people are looking for that. You know, they're also looking for, you know, influencers in exotic places doing exotic things. But people are hungry for representations of women that are non-traditional, disruptive, and, you know, fresh. And if I can make women feel more at ease in their skin, you know, then I love that. I love that. That's what I
you
want
did.
to do.
You did that for me. I mean, I just right away I was so drawn to your page, which it initially, you know, something I came across something that you posted a reel and I thought it was hilarious. And then I started following you, and then each one was more and more hilarious. But I felt so drawn to you because it helped me feel not alone. And you know, I created a Jessica knows this, but I created a ballet like 2 years ago, and it was all based off of the dating apps and
Wow.
some experiences with them. And I like to take my personal experience and bring that into my art, because that creates community and that creates sort of a shared vulnerability. And if we can't be authentic and if we can't laugh at ourselves, I like to have a lot of humor in my work too. I also have a lot of darkness in my work, but we're all humans, you know, we have it all. So I'm just really grateful that we connected in this bizarre way. We're on the other side of the world from each
Yeah.
other.
And
yet,
there's like quite a few of these connections that I've made.
uh-huh.
And people who, again, are creating content that is, you know, just a little bit, just more authentic, more truthful, more. It's like a breath of fresh air, you know, when you come across someone who's just real. And so, yeah, look, it really was capacity for me. Like I didn't have time to create a show or to, you know, produce something. I was like, you know, I'm healing from the death of my dad. I'm, you know, parenting Toby. What have I got? A couple of reels. So, you know, it does. It brings me a lot of joy.
Creative Mamas Unplugged is produced by Breatheasy Productions with music by Jeremy Jurin. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to give my mama 5 stars and keep coming back. Thanks to us kids, there are plenty of stories to tell. And you are not alone.
We are inspired by you. Thank you for joining our Creative Mamas community. Support Creative Mamas Unplugged on Patreon to get your name in the credits, receive extra content, and earn some fun prizes. With this, we can keep creating, uplifting, and growing this incredible community together. We love you so much. Applause.